I always believed my family had it all together, especially my father. He was the sort of man who captured the room, throwing extravagant parties in our grand living room decorated with gleaming chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds under the lights. As I sat behind the cashier at my retail job, scanning items and making small talk with customers, I often daydreamed about those lively gatherings. Laughter would spill from our home while I clocked in and out, a low hum of commotion always faint in the background. But amid the applause and the clinking of glasses, I was seething beneath the surface, my weariness from work piling on, compounded by the heavy weight I bore for my younger sibling. After our mother died, it was as if the world had turned gray, and the colorful parties my father hosted became the only semblance of joy in our house. One day, while cleaning up my father's home office, an area I usually avoided due to the dizzying clutter of old bills and discarded papers, I stumbled upon a letter tucked between an account statement and an invitation for yet another lavish social gathering. Its ordinary envelope seemed unfitting amongst the glossy finishes of the other documents. My curiosity piqued, I pulled it out, tracing my finger over my mother's name written in looping, familiar handwriting. What's this? I whispered to myself, glancing around as if someone might catch me invading this private space. My heartbeat quickened as I flipped it over. It felt like unearthing treasure hidden from my view all this time. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter, the scent of old paper filling my nostrils. Words leaped off the page as I read, each sentence tearing painfully through the illusion I had clung to. $100,000 in debt. I muttered under my breath, barely able to comprehend what I was reading. The reality of my father's financial ruin hit me like a free-falling weight, and I swallowed hard, feeling an enormous lump rising in my throat. How could he live such a lie while I was struggling to maintain our home? I replayed the scenes of my childhood in my head, my father's booming laughter echoing as he tossed money around for parties while I gnawed on chips just to stretch my meager budget. Panic clawed at my insides. How could you do this? I whispered, the air thick with betrayal. I pictured my father upstairs, oblivious to my unraveling world, living a life of grandeur while I barely scraped through. My eyes raced back to the letter. The list of creditors was extensive, and that number, that staggering amount of debt, loomed like a dark storm on the horizon that I never expected to see. It felt like I was rooting around in a treasure chest only to uncover a rotten stench. With each word, my mind spiraled deeper into anger and confusion. A financial hero, I hissed, the sarcasm biting my tongue, more like a fool playing pretend. The very foundation of my childhood suddenly felt unstable, like a house of cards swiftly collapsing under the weight of truth. My breath came in uneven bursts, and I felt my hands shake as I folded the letter back up, heart racing at the possibility that I may have just discovered my father's darkest secret. What was worse? Keeping it a secret from him, or confronting him and ripping off the mask he had worn for years. I could feel the heat radiating from my clenched fists as I contemplated my next move. My mind turned over decisions like a washing machine, churning the guilt I felt at the thought of laying waste to our fragile family bond. Suddenly, the familiar sound of laughter echoed from the living room. The clinks of champagne glasses and soft applause receded into the background, reminding me of my father's worldliness, of his ability to charm others while simultaneously hiding his failures from us. I dropped the letter onto the cluttered desk and stormed out of the office, exiting the comfort of ignorance and stepping right into the chaotic atmosphere of denial. Hey, Ella, one of my father's friends called out to me as I walked past. Their bright, cheerful faces felt blindingly fake to me. Are you joining us? We have plenty of drinks. I forced a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. Maybe later, I muttered, slipping through the crowd, the tension in my chest tightening with every step. This was not a day for celebration, not for me anyway. The laughter that echoed throughout the house felt foreign. It gnawed at me, filling the spaces around me with bitterness and distrust. While you all drink away, I thought bitterly, what do you know about real struggle? I caught glimpses of my father hobnobbing, shaking hands and stealing the show. His handsome face was painted with confidence. I could see the slight touch of arrogance in the way he spoke, gesturing as if he hadn't a care in the world. I wanted to confront him, but doubt crept into my mind, the fear of shattering not just my image of him, but of all that we had left together. Ella, come here, he waved me over, his eyes sparkling with joy. I could see the price of that joy now, an expense larger than I would ever appreciate. I want you to meet someone important. I felt hollow, staring at the slice of life I was expected to accept. This is your important world, and I am nothing but a game piece you maneuver, I thought. I wanted to scream, to hold the letter up high and expose all of it, the lie, the masquerade, everything he had so artfully crafted. But the words caught in my throat, trapped under the weight of secrets, and I could not form a sound. Instead, I plastered a smile on my face and nodded, feeling the sting of betrayal burrow deep in my heart, igniting a fire that I knew would one day demand to be unleashed. With my heart racing, I stood in the doorway of the living room, the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm golden glow on the expensive furniture that adorned the room, furniture that I knew was bought with money we didn't have. He reclined on the plush sofa, flipping through a glossy magazine, a smug smile playing on his lips. It made me sick. We need to talk, I said, my voice shaking slightly as I stepped inside, my determination battling against my fear. He looked up, surprise flickering through his eyes. Talk about what? His tone was nonchalant, almost mocking, as if I had just suggested we chat about the weather. Did you want my thoughts on this new vacation package, or maybe you want to hear about my latest investment? His voice dripped with a prideful arrogance. The room felt like it was closing in on me. No, I snapped, surprising myself with the sharpness of my tone. I want to talk about the debt, the mounting bills, the stress it's causing, you lying to everyone about our financial situation. This isn't just a temporary issue. The moment I said the words, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. What happened if he snapped back? Would he rage like he did before? But I had to push through. We are drowning and you won't even admit it, I added, my pulse quickening as I took a step closer. He leaned back, crossing his arms, an amused chuckle escaping his lips. Ella, stop being so dramatic. It's just a little hiccup. You know how investments work. You have to spend money to make money. Investments, I echoed, incredulous. You mean the ones that have us in thousands of dollars of debt? They are not paying off, and we both know that. You are living in a fantasy. My chest tightened and my palms began to feel clammy. I needed to keep my composure. I pictured my mother in the kitchen, humming to herself, completely unsuspecting of the financial storm brewing around her. Oh, come on, he scoffed. You should have a little faith in me. I have a vision. This is what success looks like. You just need to learn to trust the process. The way he said it, as if I was the foolish one, made my blood boil. Trust the process, I repeated, my voice barely under control. All I see is you wasting money on things we cannot afford. You have new golf clubs, fancy suits, and trips that we simply cannot take. We are on the brink of losing everything. Picked up a glass of iced tea from the side table and took a leisurely sip, as though my words were merely background noise. You worry too much, Ella. Look at the bigger picture. This is a temporary setback, not the end of the world. You are acting as if I am ruining our lives when all I am doing is working towards a better future for us. A better future? I laughed bitterly, the sound uncomfortable in my own ears. This is not working toward our better future. This is you lying and pretending. I need you to be honest. If this is truly temporary, why are creditors calling day and night? Why are our accounts being drained? Each question felt like a dagger as I threw them at him, desperate for some sign of accountability. For a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, but it vanished just as quickly. The creditors, they are just looking for easy money. They have no patience. I'll handle it. Trust me, I've got everything under control. His bravado was masking a tremor in his voice, and I could feel a knot forming in my throat. Every denial he offered felt like a fresh wound, reopening the scars of worry and anger. Under control? You think sitting here pretending everything is fine is the answer. You think that acting like you are at some celebrity gala every weekend makes it all better. My hands clenched into fists at my side, nails digging into my palms. What about the family? What about the rent? I can't even remember the last time I felt secure in our home. We can't afford the lifestyle you've created. He rolled his eyes, the dismissal in his demeanor making my heart clench with a mixture of anger and sorrow. You sound like a broken record. You need to let go of your worries. People go through tougher times every day. We will get through this. You'll see. I watched helplessly as he returned his gaze to the magazine, flipping pages as if my anguish was nothing more than a pesky fly buzzing in it. Was there any point in continuing this conversation? My mind raced, the despair deepening while thoughts of my mother's obliviousness gnawed at me. And what about her? I asked, my voice softer now, edged with pain. What about Mom? She doesn't deserve this. She's been so loyal to you, and yet you keep her in the dark. This is betrayal, plain and simple. Mom will understand when things turn around. I'll make it right, just give me time. He shot back defensively, but I saw the flicker of guilt ripple across his expression. That split second was all I needed. Maybe he didn't realize how close to the truth he was treading. I needed to turn this confrontation into something he wasn't prepared for. I took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs while my mind furiously sought a solution. This isn't just about you anymore. You are dragging our family down with your lies. If you cannot be honest, then I have to find a way to expose you for all our sakes. I will not allow you to destroy our lives, not anymore. I cannot believe you would even think that. He exploded, rising from his seat, the magazine flying from his hand to the floor. You think you know the whole story? You don't understand anything. I stared back at him defiantly, in that moment feeling a surprising strength rise within me. Then make me understand, I demanded. Tell me what really is happening, otherwise I have no choice. As the tension hummed in the air like an electric charge, I could feel the resolve coursing through my veins. I had to fight for my family, for my mother, though it seemed we were on very different paths now. And within that realization, I was reminded that sometimes the hardest battles aren't against enemies, but within the people who should love you the most. One fateful evening, I found myself at a family gathering, the smell of roasted chicken wafting in the air, mingling with laughter and the cheerful chatter of relatives. It was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a time for celebrating togetherness, yet as I stood in the corner of the living room, my heart felt heavy. The flickering candlelight danced on the faces of my family as they gathered around, eager to hear the latest stories of triumph and joy. But my attention was snagged by him, my father, sitting on the couch like a king surveying his court, proudly displaying a grin that stretched from ear to ear. I just picked up my new sports car, everyone, he announced, his voice booming with the same pride one might expect from a man who had just discovered the cure for a disease. You should see the engine. I think it could outrun a jet. His words echoed in my head like a siren, every syllable setting my insides churning. The glances of admiration from family members only piled onto my rising resentment. How could he stand there and bask in their praise while I knew the truth, lurking beneath the surface like a predator in the shadows? It struck me like a thunderbolt. This moment did not belong to him, it belonged to me. This is wonderful, Dad. My cousin chimed in, a glimmer of envy sparkling in his eyes. You worked hard for it, you deserve it. His words cut deeper than any knife. Did they really think my father had worked hard? Did they not see what I saw? It felt like betrayal, a betrayal so deep that I could hardly breathe. My chest tightened as if I were caught in a vice, the weight of it all forcing me to step back out of sight. Until this moment, the sacrifices I had made felt like quiet whispers in my heart. But now, in the face of his absurd vanity, they screamed out for recognition. I had abandoned my own dreams, my hope of painting in New York, of exploring my love for art just to keep our family afloat during his financial mismanagement. I thought of my savings, subtracted year after year to cover bills, and yet he was fine, no, thriving. You should let us take a ride, Dad, take us for a spin. Another relative chimed in, stoking the flames of my father's ego, laughter punctuating every keen word. I licked my lips, feeling a bitter taste pool there. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand they see the reality of his situation. They couldn't know that while he strutted around bragging like a peacock, I was the one juggling the family finances, swallowing hard at each new bill, all the while pinching pennies just to scrape by. I stood silently, heart racing, as a knot of anxiety twisted tighter in my stomach. I had to do something drastic. The family's admiration for him felt suffocating, like a thick fog stealing the breath right out of my lungs. I slipped away from the crowd, my mind racing. I knew what I had to do. I headed to my room, closing the door softly behind me. The familiar light of my laptop glowed in the dimness. I needed evidence, cold, hard proof of the deceit he wove around our family like a silken web. I opened each drawer of my desk, desperate fingers rifling through every piece of paper I had stored over the years. It felt like a scavenger hunt, searching for the secrets I needed to expose, the bank statements that wielded the truth of his lavish spending against precious family funds. I found the first bank statement, the one showing a substantial luxury car loan, that sports car my father bragged about. I felt a sharp pang in my chest, a mix of anger and sadness. This was the man who had sworn to be our protector, who had always insisted he was providing for us, but it was all a facade, a thin layer of paint over a crumbling wall. I thumbed through pages of credit card bills. This was not just about money. It was a ferocious betrayal of trust. I thought back to nights spent worrying if we would have enough left for groceries after he'd made extravagant purchases. Memories flooded back with piercing clarity, the heat of frustration on my cheeks when I discovered another late payment, the phone calls to the bank. This was the reality he kept hidden. A knock on my door startled me, and my heart thudded loudly in my ears. Ella, is everything okay in there? It was my mother's concerned voice. Yeah, just working on something, I managed to reply, trying to mask the trembling in my voice. Nobody is upset with you for skipping out early, she said gently. Family gatherings can get overwhelming. Sure, I just need some air, I lied, even as my lips twitched into an unconvincing smile. She paused before responding, and for a fleeting moment I felt guilty. Just remember, we're here for you. I could almost hear the love in her voice, a tether to my true self, the Ella before the storm of betrayal swept in. But this was more than just my hurt, it was about our family. I turned back to my computer screen, honing in on every detail, fully absorbed in my task. As the hours ticked by, I felt both a fierce determination and a fluttering fear of what would come next. With every piece I gathered, corporate invoices, online purchase receipts, and the damning documents showing how his facade of success was just smoke and mirrors, I could feel the weight of the world starting to shift. The knots in my stomach unwound minutely as a plan began to shape in my mind, pushing aside the doubts that previously clouded my thoughts. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice, about standing against the betrayal that had ensnared not just me, but the entire family. I was ready to confront the truth and shine a light on the shadow of deceit that he had cast over all of us. The fear that once wrapped around me now transformed into a steely resolve. I could finally see the path ahead, illuminated not by flames of anger but by the light of justice. The day had finally arrived, and as I stood in the living room where the family reunion was set to unfold, a flurry of emotions washed over me. The scent of grilled burgers wafted through the air, mingling with the excitement and laughter of my relatives outside. I could hear their voices, the clinking of glasses, occasional bursts of laughter, all while my heart raced against my ribcage like a caged bird desperate for freedom. This was not a simple family gathering. It was a battleground, and I was the soldier ready to unveil the truth. I glanced around the room, the walls adorned with family photos harking back to happier times, moments that now felt like a distant memory. My father occupied the center stage, his voice booming with exuberance as he recounted tales of his supposed successes, tales that I had long since learned were fabrications woven from deceit. You see, this is how I saved our last business deal, he was saying, puffing out his chest. I stood, framed by the doorway, feeling a boiling anger rising within me. How could he stand there and lie so easily? With a deep, trembling breath, I stepped forward, commanding an audience's attention simply by the gravity of my presence. Can I have everyone's attention, please? I called out, attempting to soften the sharp edge of my voice that felt so foreign to me. The room slowly quieted down. Eyes shifted towards me, initially curious but soon mirrored my own intense pulse. Even my father's chatter faded as he turned to me, the smile slipping slightly from his lips when he noticed the look in my eyes. What is it, Ella? he asked, still trying to maintain the facade of his laid-back confidence. We are in the middle of an important conversation here. I felt my stomach twist but pushed past the sensations that clawed at me, determined to stay steady. What I have to say is more important than anything we were just talking about. My heart raced even faster as I motioned everyone to sit back down. The rustle of chairs filled the room as my relatives settled, confusion etched on their faces as they sensed the tension thickening in the air. I have called this family meeting for a reason, I said, every word feeling heavy with purpose. I pulled out the envelope I had meticulously prepared during sleepless nights. It sat in my hand like a stone, but I could not allow any hesitation to ground me with its weight. I believe it is time for us to have an honest discussion about our family, particularly about you. I turned to my father, who now looked like a deer caught in headlights. His arrogance cracked, and I could almost hear the sound of his bravado shattering. What do you mean? He asked, his voice faltering slightly. An edge of worry tinted his tone, and I noticed a bead of sweat trickle down the side of his temple. Let me start with this, I said firmly, tearing open the envelope and producing the letter that had been my undoing. This letter opened my eyes. I held it aloft, watching the way everyone leaned in, the collective breath of confusion sweeping through the room like a gust of wind. My relatives shifted restlessly in their seats, and I locked eyes with them, siphoning their intrigue to my own purpose. This letter outlines your numerous debts, Dad. The lies, the loans you have hidden so well, I continued, pouring out the truth like a dam that had finally burst. You promised us stability, comfort, security, but what you have given us is a mountain of financial deception. You have buried us under secrets, all while pretending to lead some honest life. I could see the shock radiating across the faces of my family, their mouths agape, their eyes flickering from the letter to me, then back to him. This isn't what it looks like, Ella, he stammered, clearly rattled. I was going to take care of everything, you just don't understand. He attempted to regain control, clearing his throat loudly as if trying to drown out the reality swirling around him. Oh, I understand perfectly, I interrupted, unable to contain my rising thrill as his confident facade began to crack and crumble. I understand that you have fed us nothing but illusions, Dad. You have portrayed yourself as a hero, while behind the curtain you have been nothing more than a villain. I paused, giving everyone a moment to digest my words. The silence reverberated against the walls, thick and heavy. Gasps began to sprout from the crowd. The sound was like sweet music to my ears. My father's reality was being stripped away, layer by agonizing layer. I allowed myself a smile, a small, satisfying product of his downfall. What are you talking about? My mother finally chimed in, her voice strained. This isn't making any sense. It makes perfect sense, Mom, I said, wanting her to realize the deceit they had bought into as well. It's all right here. I gestured toward the letter again. Several relatives exchanged glances, disbelief embedded within the contours of their brows. I could feel the shift, the balance was tilting in my favor. Without waiting for their reactions, I drew nearer to my father, who now sat in his chair, frail and defeated, absorbing the magnitude of my accusations. You never even cared to think about how your lies would affect us, did you? I pressed, my voice steady and cold, contrasting with the tempest of emotions surging inside me. His head lowered further, shame replacing arrogance. Ella, he started, but trailed off as if he could not even form the words to respond. The atmosphere pulsed with tension as the uncomfortable truth settled over us. My relatives murmured among themselves, whispers escalating into probing questions as realization dawned on them like a bitter sunrise. I took a breath, my heart pounding with triumph as finally, the facade of my father's self-righteousness hung limp before me. I had not just revealed the truth, I had laid bare the devastation he had inflicted upon us all. And as I watched his head hang low in defeat, as if the collective weight of his deceptions pressed down on his shoulders, I could feel a burning satisfaction ignite within me. A small victory against the years of silence in that moment. I felt a wave of release wash over me. My heart thundered in my chest as disbelief and clarity danced together in my mind. I had spent so many years under the shadow of his deceit, my father's lies wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket, and now I stood taller, my shoulders square, the once stagnant air around me swirling with life and revelation. The assembly of relatives surrounding me felt like an avalanche crashing down, the weight of years of silence now shattering dramatically. Disappointment flickered like shadows in their eyes, mingling with sympathy, anger, and perhaps even a hint of envy for the strength they never thought I possessed. Ella, I can't believe he would do this. A voice broke through the murmur of voices like a sharp knife through fog. It was my aunt, her brow furrowed in disbelief, her hands clenched at her sides. After everything he said, how could he betray us like this? I swallowed hard, my throat dry from the tension. I could feel the warmth of tears pooling in my eyes, but I blinked them away, not wanting to appear weak at this moment of reckoning. I thought I was protecting the family, I said, my voice trembling, turning a blind eye to the truth and hoping he would change. I wanted us to be whole. It stung to admit that my hopes had been foolish, learned through years of swallowed fears. My mother stood there, tears streaming down her face. The mascara she had so expertly applied this morning now bled down her cheeks, but in her expression I saw more than sorrow, I saw recognition. I saw the truth tearing through the layers of denial she had wrapped herself in for far too long. Ella, she began, her voice thick with emotion, you did what I couldn't, you freed us from the chains of his lies. There was a weight to her words, a bittersweet taste, as if all the moments I had painted over with hope were now exposed, raw and vulnerable. I took a step toward her, our eyes locking, and in that instant the years of silence seemed to dissolve. "But why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, searching my gaze for an answer that was buried deep in the shadows of our shared past. Her anguish was palpable, and I could feel my own lips quivering, the burden of isolation temporarily forgotten in the tide of our connection. "I was afraid," I admitted, my voice a mere whisper, trembling like the fluttering leaves outside the window. I was terrified of what it would mean to dive into the truth of what might happen to our family. My uncle stepped closer, his brows knitted together tightly as he glanced between my mother and me. "You were right to bring this out into the open. It was only a matter of time before it all spiraled out of control." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, strong and earnest as it struck a chord deep within me. They were finally opening their hearts to me, and we were no longer divided by the walls he had built between us. As more relatives turned their backs on my father, each rejection felt like a brick being removed from a wall I hadn't even realized had encased me. "You're brave, Ella," another relative spoke up, a soft smile cutting through the tension, staring down the monster he created. "Know that we all stand with you." I felt my heart swell at this warmth. Their support enveloped me like a protective shield, a response to my bravery that I never anticipated. Yet in the corner of the room I spotted him, the king of the family's illusion. His face twisted with confusion and anger, his mouth moving soundlessly as if he were trying to summon words that would hold no power anymore. It was a dizzying sight watching him, a once dominant figure, now teetering at the edge of disbelief. "How could you do this to me?" he finally shouted, desperation lacing his voice. I took a breath, my body steeling against the memories of his power, the way he had woven fear into the fabric of our home. "You did this to yourself," I said, my voice loud and steady. "You built your throne on lies, and that's a fragile foundation to stand on. You claimed to love us, but your love felt like chains." His expression cracked, revealing the man beneath the facade of confidence. I reveled in this moment. I had taken back my power, and as I stood in that room full of support, I could see his glory fading, the control he once wielded evaporating like mist in the sunlight. As they all embraced me, wordlessly expressing their support for my bravery, I felt a profound shift. I was crowned with the truth, not as a despotic ruler, but as someone who had earned the respect of family by simply being honest. It was exhilarating to be free from the weight of conviction that urged me to mirror his deception. In this moment, I realized that the truth is indeed mightier than deception. I hugged my mother tightly, feeling her heartbeat mingling with mine, a soothing rhythm that ushered in the newfound hope. "You deserve this, Ella," she murmured into my hair, her voice soft but fierce, a protective promise that had been forged in the fire of our shared pain. "Maybe now we can finally move forward together," I whispered back, the prospect lighting a flame of excitement in my chest. The burden of his lies had been lifted, and suddenly the air felt heavy with possibility. As I took a step back, still surrounded by my family, I glanced around at their faces. They weren't looking at me with pity or regret, they were looking at me with admiration. For the first time, I felt strong, and it felt like I was standing on the threshold of a new beginning. I had reclaimed my life, freed us all from the grip of my father's treachery with nothing but the force of honesty. And here in this moment, unburdened by the deceit that once threatened to drown us all, I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead.